of California at the table for discussions, something that just a few years ago was really unthinkable. But today as a basin, we've been working together and have been able to come up with this joint proposal of great significance. This deal simply would not have been possible without the leadership of the governor. Throughout her career as a social worker, state legislator, secretary of state, and now as governor, Katie Hobbs has been a fighter for what matters for Arizona, and this is certainly a great example of that. She puts sanity ahead of chaos and is changing our state for the better. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our governor to say a few words about this critical issue. Thank you.
Thank you,
Governor.
Terry. Thank you so much, Terry. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to Central Arizona Project for hosting us and your work in delivering and securing this critical water supply for Arizona cities, farms, and tribes. Thank you also to Governor Stephen Roe Lewis for being here today. The partnership between the Gila River Indian community and the state of Arizona has time and time again moved our state forward, and I am sincerely grateful to you. We are also joined today by Tom Buschatzke, Director of the Arizona Department of Water Resources and Chair of my Water Policy Council, and Brenda Burman, General Manager of the Central Arizona Water Project. Their expertise and leadership will be crucial to the future of Arizona's water, and I'm grateful to them for their continued public service. Earlier this week, I announced a historic proposal with the lower basin states to protect Arizona's water future. I made a promise to Arizonans that I would take action on the most pressing issues affecting our families, businesses, and livelihoods. Water was high on that list. Now, after previously missed deadlines and failed negotiations, I am proud to follow through on that promise with a plan that will provide immediate and substantial support for the Colorado River. This proposal will conserve 3 million acre-feet of water and provide greater protections for Lake Mead and Lake Powell than either of the federal government's alternatives. It's a critical first step in securing our state's water future for generations to come. I led a letter to the Department of the Interior with Nevada and California urging the federal government to support this proposal. The Upper Basin states have also expressed their support for federal review of the Lower Basin Plan. That every single Colorado River Basin state is on the same page with this submission is a major accomplishment. But what it will do for Arizona and for the country as a whole cannot be understated. This decisive action will provide immediate relief and allow us to refocus our efforts on post-2026 plans that will secure a resilient Arizona so we can continue to grow and prosper for generations to come. Without this partnership, the federal government would have forced drastic cuts to Arizona's water use. Instead, we successfully negotiated voluntary conservation efforts, allowing states, cities, and farmers to have a say in their water future. No Arizonan will be forced to reduce their water use. This is a great deal for Arizona, but we know long-term actions are needed. I'm committed to continuing these partnerships and starting these conversations about post-2026 plans immediately. This Colorado River success also complements the work of my Water Policy Council, which I recently convened for its first meeting. I've directed members to focus on rural groundwater management and come up with ways to strengthen our assured water supply program. I will continue to bring people together across the state and across the country until meaningful solutions are reached. My message to Arizonans today is this. As your governor, I will always put your interests first. Whether you're a new parent worried about the future of your child, a business owner concerned about the sustainability of our economy, or a student who just wants their government to take climate change seriously, Arizona is taking action. I look forward to Arizona leading the way and continuing to build an Arizona for everyone. And now I'm going to hand it off to Governor Stephen Roe Lewis.
Kuksiadak, Anya Anapchugat, Governor Stephen Rowe Lewis of the Gila River Indian Community. Thank you, Governor Hobbs, both for your introduction, but also for your strong leadership on this issue of such critical importance to our state and to our region. Today, we're discussing a major development in our collective efforts to protect the Colorado River system and to maintain the critical elevations at Lake Mead and Lake Powell. On Monday, the Department of Interior announced its decision to pull back its original draft SEIS proposal and to begin its analysis of a new proposal, hammered out by the lower basin states that relies largely on voluntary efforts to conserve water in Lake Mead. Now, just a little over a month ago, we were with you, Governor Hobbs, announcing the Gila River Indian Community's agreement to contribute a very significant part of the water to this voluntary historic conservation effort through both our conservation agreement and our reclaimed water pipeline. Now, combined, those two agreements could contribute almost 15% of the total conservation target of 3 million acre feet. And here we are today, celebrating how that launch we did together in April, Governor, has resulted in a new proposal for the whole basin that we hope will be the basis for the department's solution for this upcoming period. I want to say that having seen the modeling that backs up the lower basin proposal, it's great for our state of Arizona, for our tribes, the entire region, and we are proud to be a part of this, again, historic effort. Once again, through the cooperative relationship that Arizona tribes have with the state, particularly so in your administration, Governor Hobbs, we have shown that Arizona can truly lead the way in finding creative and cooperative solutions to the thorniest of issues. I have two final things that I want to mention before I close. One, I want to commend your team, Governor Hobbs, for their excellent work in the negotiations that led to this new lower basin proposal. We were involved with the federal side throughout the community, and I can tell you personally that Tom Buschatzke did an incredible job in advocating for the state's interests, Governor. And two, I want to close by saying that the department's decision to analyze our proposal does not mean an end to our hard work, but really sets forth a new path for us to forge ahead together. There's so much work to do as we turn the lower basin proposal into reality and then continue on to a revision of the overall guidelines by which our basin operates. But one thing is for certain, I am confident that we have the right team here in Arizona to tackle this hard task. And I look forward to our continued collaboration under the strong leadership of you, Governor Hobbs. Thank you.
Good morning. I think most of the salient points have already been made, so I'll be brief. The collaborative nature of this proposal that was submitted by Arizona, California, and Nevada is testament to our ability to rise up and collectively find ways to protect Lake Mead and the Colorado River. This proposal builds upon the good hydrology from this year's snow season. If adopted by the Department of the Interior, Lake Mead's elevation will increase over the next 3 years, not just stabilize. As a result, too, this deal allows some safe space for the basin states to negotiate what our Colorado River world will look like when current operating guidelines expire at the end of 2026, knowing that before 2026, we are not going to end up in a crisis. Real challenges lie ahead in the coming negotiations, but this agreement and the good hydrology we are seeing have created a strong starting point for all of us. Thank you.
Governor Hobbs, Governor Lewis, Director Buschatzke, We want to welcome you to Central Arizona Project to highlight this incredible week for water in Arizona. I think it's been said, but I'll repeat. This is our basin coming together. This is Arizonans coming together. This is our way of finding a voluntary path forward for an incredibly important short-term deal. This deal will give us breathing space. We won't every month be looking to the river to ask, where is it? What are we going to need to do? What will be the repercussions next year? What will be our reductions or our shortage? With this agreement, we can look ahead through 2026 and find that stability so we can pivot to the long-term solutions that we know we all need post-2026. Arizona has a history of coming together around water, an incredible history, starting over 100 years ago. And we, this week, I think Governor Hobbs, with your leadership, Governor Lewis, we are showing that leadership again today. Thank you, Governor Hobbs. We are grateful for your leadership. We are grateful for your ability to help pull us together, to lead us away from chaos and lead us towards smart solutions. That's what we'll be looking forward to. That's what we will turn our faces towards, because we're water managers. And as water managers and as looking out for this state, we know we don't need to just secure our water supply tomorrow. We need to secure our water supply for the next generation too. That's our job, and that's what we'll get to right now. Thank you.
Great. We'll start Q&A. I'll call on people. Right there.
Hi, Mark Phillips, ABC 15. Governor, good to see you.
You too.
Can anyone tell us how much water Arizona will be conserving as part of this protection?
So I'll take a shot at answering that question. And the numbers are not yet completely defined because, as was discussed, all of this is being done through voluntary agreements. But we're probably on target for somewhere close to 1.8 million acre feet or so coming out of Arizona of the three. But we also have to recognize that we're building upon the current operating agreements in DCP, and next year we expect Arizona to take on top of that 512,000 acre feet of cut. So we're going to still do the bulk of the heavy lifting. There are different ways to calculate the percentages depending on what elevations we end up with in Lake Mead over the next 3 years, but somewhere between 50 and 60% of the total reductions plus new conservation is going to come out of Arizona, and somewhere between 30 and 35% out of California. And I don't have the numbers for Nevada and Mexico off the top of my head, but obviously a substantial portion of the water is coming out of those entities as well.
Right there. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Dennis, go ahead.
If I could, the 512,000 acre feet of cuts, that's just a continuation of the stage 2A shortage stage that we're in, and then 1.8 million is on top of that. Is that what you're saying?
So the 512 is actually tier 1. It's an expectation for next year based on what we're seeing so far in each monthly study that Reclamation puts out. The total in the lower basin in Mexico in a tier 1 is 613,000 acre feet. And again, we're doing the bulk of that 512,000. In out years, the tiers could change and that number could increase, could decrease. So that remains to be seen how big that number is. But either way, whatever those numbers are, when you add in the 3 million acre feet, we are going to protect in a robust way both Lake Mead and Lake Powell and the critical elevations that were looked at in the draft environmental impact statement by the Department of Interior.
The linchpin here is a couple billion to pay people not to use water. How sustainable is that going forward? I mean, is that a path that can be taken in the post-2026 route? What does that look like?
I mean, I'll just say, I think that what's important about this this proposal is that it gives us a chance to have some breathing room and start focusing on what 2026 looks like now, without the drastic impact of whatever the federal government would have done without this proposal in place. And I don't know if you want to add to that, Tom.
Yes, Governor. So it's important to note, if you looked at the press statement from the federal government, you total up the water that the federal government is paying for, it's 2.5 million acre feet. And then we are putting on the states another 500,000 acre feet. All of the water is coming out of the water users in the state of that 3 million. It was a very important part of the discussions with the federal government about how much was going to be compensated under the Inflation Reduction Act and the other federal pots of money, and how much would come forward from the states without that federal money. I think yesterday the federal government announced phase 2 of their efficiency program, bucket 2 as they call it. That program is designed to have long-term efficiencies for long-term durable benefits to the system. So there's this balance of short-term now to help get us through 2026, but also the opportunity under that bucket 2 program to create long-term benefits that will help us potentially through 2026, but are really intended to create water savings in the system for post-2026 and beyond.
Stacey.
Governor or Director Buschatzke, can you address what you're thinking of in terms of these longer-term solutions that you're now going to work on, now that we have some safety net through 2026?
Yes, thanks, Governor. So there are different projections by scientists about how much Colorado River we can rely upon out into the future. The long-term historical average of 15 million acre feet, we haven't seen that in the last 20 or so years. There are some scientists out of Utah State that say the river is going to be 9 million acre feet. So one of the big challenges moving forward is, what river do we plan for? How do we design the operations at Lake Powell and Lake Mead and elsewhere to make sure that we're going to deal with what we expect to be the long-term yield of the river, and in a way that we don't have to do the kind of short-term fixes that we're talking about here today. And if we're lucky enough to get more water than what we're planning for, we'll find ways to use it within that plan. But I think we're going to have to, in the long-term planning effort, look at probably using less water than we did historically before we entered into certainly the 2007 guidelines or the drought contingency plan.
Could you just elaborate, maybe Governor, could you take this one on how you do that, given Arizona is growing so much and there's so many people coming here and we need more water for people?
I mean, I think the position we're in right now is because we haven't done really thoughtful long-term planning on this. We've kicked the can down the road, and we're going to stop doing that. We're starting now, planning for what that looks like. This proposal allows us to start doing that now. And so, I mean, I think we have to have all the stakeholders at the table. And we did in these discussions and this agreement, and we're going to continue as hard as it is to keep everyone at the table. That's going to be a critical piece of doing this.
Brenda.
Governor, what has been the reaction of the surrounding states on your proposal?
Well, obviously, we got support from all of the basin states, and so that's critical. But around the country, I've been hearing from my colleagues who are just really think it's great that we got this done.
So there are fears of the river heading towards litigation to decision being blocked. Does this proposal alleviate those fears, or is litigation post-2026 still a possibility?
I mean, I think litigation's always a possibility, but I don't know if you want to be more specific, Tom.
So, Governor, yes, so certainly in the short term, one of the motivating factors for coming to agreement, and this is a 3-state proposal, right? But one of those factors was there was a May 30th deadline impending here to respond to the draft EIS. All of us were lining out our legal positions to protect our ability to participate in litigation if that came out of the draft EIS. And we know that action alternative 1 and action alternative 2 We heard from lots of different parties who didn't like elements of both of those alternatives. So this avoids, at least in the near term, litigation when the federal government reissues the next version of the EIS, and after they've done their analysis, there'll be opportunities to comment. Depending on what comes out in that document, we'll have another look at what the near-term litigation risk is. And the target date for that is sometime this fall, and it's not more specific than that time frame.
Can we talk about some of the breakdown of this 1.8 million acre feet that's going to come out of Arizona? I think we know some of the big ones. The Gila River Indian Community, something like 230 million. Tucson and Phoenix have also announced plans in the 140 million range. What do we know beyond that? And also, on the level of sort of regular folks, I mean, these buckets sometimes can obscure who actually gets the water, who's really going to not get water now.
So if you'll bear with me with getting down into the weeds this morning, the federal government put out a press statement, and I'll read the numbers. The city of Phoenix, and these are 3-year totals, 150,000 acre feet. The city of Tucson, 110,000 acre feet. Sarco, 56,000. The city of Glendale, 21,000. City of Peoria, 19,400. City of Scottsdale, 18,000. Metro Water District in kind of North Tucson area, 15,000 acre feet. And the town of Gilbert, 3,600. Those are announcements today. There are other entities, other farmers. Maybe there are some other tribes they're talking about. Fort McDowell Yavapai Nation already signed an agreement for 14,000 acre feet a year for 3 years, which wasn't obviously in this list. Governor Lewis talked about their agreement already. So it is a work in progress in terms of the specifics, and we'll continue to announce the specifics as they become publicly available when these agreements are actually consummated.
All right, we have time for like 2 more questions, so right there.
This one's for either Governor Hobbs or Governor Lewis. I wanted to know specifically how tribes had a key play in this decision and what made this the best path forward for these tribal nations, because each of them have their own sovereign rights to their water.
Right. Well, for the Gila River Indian community, and I think it's important being here in CAP, we're the single largest customer. About 25%, a quarter of water that goes through the CAP to transported Colorado River goes through to the community. So that's significant. And for the community, with that, you know, we see ourselves modeling good behavior in the time of this historic drought. You know, we're going to be part of our conservation efforts. We're going to be conserving up to 125,000 acre feet per year for the next 3 years leading up to 2026. We just also signed a historic deal for, along with our conservation efforts, with a reclaimed pipeline project as well. That's going to, from 2026 on, at least for the next 6 years, conserve up to around 160,000 acre feet of water as well. We're also looking at on-the-ground conservation efforts in regards to lining our canals, and also we're going to be close to breaking ground on the first solar over-canal system, not only in Indian country or in Arizona, but in the Western Hemisphere as well. And I think maybe SRP or CAP may be a little bit far behind us, but you know, just joking. But these are the important efforts that the Gila River Indian community is doing. We take this seriously, and you know, there's going to be just a lot of hard work ahead of us. But for the community, we're in this because this is who we are. This is in our culture and tradition to conserve, to be good stewards of the water, and to have a partnership with Governor Hobbs' administration that respects tribal sovereignty, working with the federal government to make sure that they uphold tribal sovereignty and water as a trust resource as well. you know, that's something that, thank you for the question, that all tribes are very concerned about. And the Gila River Indian community, we're privileged to be leading the way in this very momentous, generational challenge that we have before us.
All right, our last question, right there.
Is there
Thank you. So with 1.5 million acres being conserved, how is that going to affect the average Arizonan? And if so, will certain parts of Arizona be affected more than others?
No Arizonan is going to be forced to cut their water use, and I don't know if you want to be, I think that's the bottom line.
So as the governor said, I think a huge part of this plan, because these water users are coming forward voluntarily and putting their water on the table, they know what those impacts are. Some of them have alternative supplies. Some of them have been putting some of this water under the ground for the future for various reasons. So somebody sitting in their home or business, they're not going to get a phone call from a city and say, you got to cut back. That is not part of this deal. You might not, despite that, you might see calls by some of the cities to maybe start reducing some of their outdoor water use, for example, just to give even more flexibility for those cities to conserve their water and have a better water future. So we're not going to see the kind of impacts I think that people are afraid of, that somebody's going to be shut off. That is not going to be part of this deal. If that would have been the outcome, the water using entity would not have put their water on the table in the first place. I know for the community, they're fallowing some of their farmland, so there's going to be impacts there. We have some farming entities along the Colorado River that are negotiating contracts to precipitate reductions of some of their farming. So there will be impacts, but the impacts, I think, on the individual user, I think, are going to be dealt with in a very positive way, or they wouldn't have put the water on the table in the first place.
All right, thank you, everybody. We gotta call it quits. So if you have any follow-up or any questions, please speak with someone on my team or reach me over email or phone. Thank you all for coming.